You know those stories about someone who starts off as a total hero, just full of promise, only to end in complete and utter tragedy? Well, today, we're going to dive into one of those. It's the story of an ancient king whose life is a massive warning sign. But it's also a story that unlocks a much, much deeper truth that echoes through the entire Bible. It's all about a borrowed lamp and what happens when that original light finally goes out.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at this king and his borrowed light. Then, we're going to solve a fascinating puzzle from the New Testament about the very first and last martyrs. From there, we'll dig into the danger of a faith that isn't really your own, uncover a stunning plot twist in God's hidden verdict, and finally, we'll discover the source of a light that never ever goes out.
All right, let's jump in. Our story starts with a guy who, honestly, seems like one of the great heroes of the Bible, King Joash. I mean, this kid's backstory is epic. He was hidden in the temple as a baby to escape his murderous grandmother and then crowned king when he was just 7 years old. In his early reign, it was a golden age of reform. Things were looking up.
But right here, in the very verse that's praising him, the Bible drops a massive clue about his downfall. Did you catch it? It's subtle, but it's everything. His righteousness wasn't really his. It was conditional. It only lasted all the days of Jehoiada the priest, his mentor, his spiritual guide. See, Joash wasn't a source of light himself. He was more like a mirror, just reflecting the light of someone else.
And when you put it side by side, the contrast is just, wow, it's night and day. While his mentor, Jehoiada, was alive, Joash was the perfect king. He was passionate about repairing the temple. He followed God's law. But the second Jehoiada died, it's like a switch flipped. The mirror went dark. He abandoned the very temple he had just rebuilt. He started serving idols. And then he committed an absolutely horrific act of betrayal.
There's actually a name for this. It's what you might call temporary faith. It's a belief system that's built on the foundation of a religious environment or maybe a really powerful mentor, but it's not a personal, internal relationship with God. And here's the critical part. Once that external support is gone, the whole thing just collapses. Joash had all the motions of religion, but he didn't have the relationship.
Okay, so this is where the story gets even bigger, believe it or not. The personal collapse of this one king is actually the key to solving a puzzle that spans the entire Old Testament, a puzzle that Jesus himself brings up hundreds of years later.
So Jesus is calling out the religious leaders of his day, and he talks about all the righteous blood that had been shed, from Abel all the way to Zechariah, son of Barachiah, who was murdered in the temple. But wait a minute. The prophet that King Joash murdered in the temple was Zechariah the son of Jehoiada, not Barachiah. So what's going on here? Did Jesus make a mistake? Is there a typo in the Bible?
Well, the answer isn't a mistake. It's actually all about how the library was organized. You see, in the traditional Hebrew way of ordering the Old Testament books, the very first book is Genesis, and the very last book is Chronicles. That's a little different from the order you might see in a Bible today.
And this explains everything. It's brilliant, really. Abel was the very first martyr we read about, and that's in the first book, Genesis. Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, was the last martyr recorded in the very last book, Chronicles. So Jesus wasn't getting the name wrong. He was making this profound, sweeping statement. He was basically saying, you are guilty of rejecting God's messengers from the A to the Z of your own scriptures. It was an incredible literary bookend, and that name, Barachiah, it likely just means blessed by God, perhaps a family name linking Zechariah to a prophetic line. So let's start connecting these dots. We've got the personal mystery of a good king who turned evil, and we've got this biblical mystery of the first and the last martyrs. And they are woven together by one single, incredibly dangerous thread.
The parallel here is actually pretty chilling. Think about the very first murderer in the Bible, Cain. He was a religious guy, he brought a sacrifice to God, but it was all based on his own effort, on his own terms, not on true faith. And when God rejected it, his religious pride boiled over into rage, and he killed his brother Abel, who was a true worshiper. Now fast forward centuries. Here's Joash, a man whose faith was based entirely on his environment. And what does he do? He kills the true prophet Zechariah. It's the exact same pattern. A religion that looks good on the outside, but doesn't have a real heart connection to God, ends up turning violent against those who do.
And this is where this ancient story comes crashing right into our lives today. It forces every single one of us to ask a really tough question. Whose light are we walking in? Is it a borrowed light, something we got from our parents, our culture, a pastor, a mentor? Or is it a fire that has been lit personally, deep down inside of us?
But the story doesn't end there, with a faithless king getting away with murder. Oh no.
In fact, what looks like a tragic defeat for God's prophet is actually setting the stage for one of the most incredible plot twists in the entire Old Testament, and it's been hidden in plain sight this whole time.
As he lay dying in that temple courtyard, Zechariah uttered these last words. Now, this wasn't just a cry of pain. This was a formal appeal to the high court of heaven. He was officially asking God, the ultimate judge, to see what happened and to bring a just verdict. And let me tell you, God answered.
So the Bible tells us that King Joash was later assassinated by his own officials, and then it gives us their names. Now this is where it gets incredible. The mother of one of the assassins was named Shimeth. Her name comes from the Hebrew root word shima, which means he heard. That's part one of God's verdict.
Okay, you ready for part two? The mother of the other assassin was named Shimrith. This comes from the root word shamar, which means to guard, to keep, or to preserve justice. So God didn't just hear the cry, he was actively guarding his own standard of what is right.
And then, the final piece. One of the assassins himself was named Zabad, and that name literally means he gave or he repaid. So God heard the cry, he guarded justice, and now he repaid the injustice. The verdict is complete.
So let's just put it all together. Look at this. Through the very names of the conspirators, God is speaking. The Lord heard, he guarded his justice, and he repaid. God literally embedded his divine verdict on King Joash right into the names of the people he used to carry it out. Zechariah's prayer was answered, not just in an event, but in a hidden message for all of history to find. How amazing is that?
Okay, so this brings us to the final and most crucial point of this whole story. How do we avoid the tragedy of a borrowed lamp? What is the ultimate solution to a faith that can just flicker and die out?
You see, Joash's core problem was that his faith was anchored to a mortal man. Now, Jehoiada was a great man, a fantastic mentor, but he was still just a man. He died, and when he died, his influence ended. He was just a shadow of the real thing. The only real solution is to anchor our faith not to a human mentor, but to the eternal Savior, Jesus Christ. He is the eternal high priest who never dies, whose influence never ends, and who is constantly, always there for us.
The book of Hebrews gives us this incredible promise. Because Jesus always lives, his ability to save is complete, it's permanent. Unlike Jehoiada, our mediator will never die. And what that means is that our connection to God doesn't have to be temporary. It can be totally secure, because the one holding on to us is eternal.
So we end right back where we started, with a question. The story of King Joash is a powerful warning that a faith borrowed from even the best people is a lamp that will, eventually, run out of oil. So the real question for you, for me, for all of us is this. Is the light we're living by a borrowed lamp that can be blown out, or is it connected to the eternal, never-fading sun?